talked about the effects of Dana White on the UFC, Donald Trump on the UFC. I am curious of your opinion on the effect of Joe Rogan. His audience is massive. He is now not number one anymore. He is a top 3 podcast in the world. His YouTube subs are insane. He's nearing 20 million. Instagram nearing 20 million. Twitter, over 15 million followers. As of February 2025, this is via Podscribe, he had 51.5 million downloads and plays. He was thanked by Dana White in the post-election speech, and he attended the inauguration. He went from, as a lot of people like to joke about, the Fear Factor host to being one of the biggest voices, arguably, in the media space in the world. What is your opinion of his effect on the UFC and also this new wave of UFC fan?
I mean, there's just no way to say he's anything other than deeply influential. You know, again, these are facts that you can like. These are facts that you can hate, but you have to just kind of reconcile with where they are. Cards on the table. For folks listening, I was on his show in October of 2020. Very friendly. Very friendly in person. We only discussed MMA for anyone. We didn't discuss anything else. We just discussed MMA, and or for the most part anyway. And but I have a feeling that I ruffled some feathers on the show with what I said, and I was not invited back, which doesn't necessarily mean anything. But that's my theory is that the two are related. I cannot prove that, but that's my theory. But there's simply no denying he is enormously influential. I think, he has somewhat benefited from the association with them early on, because he was kind of more like the Fear Factor guy. Dude, I knew him as the news radio guy. I mean, that's, I'm kind of an old fucker in that way. And then, he began to really get some shine from his association with the UFC, but then somewhere it flipped, and then he was the one conferring status upon it. And I think that has proven to be extremely influential with, getting young men to watch, bigger audiences more generally. It has, mainlined that world into MAGA world, into Rogan world, which are, overlapping but distinct as well. And, it has been a hugely influential figure in who watches the sport and for what reasons. At the same time, I would say that the hardcore fan is quite fatigued with him. It does not appear that he does a significant amount of research before calling fights. He does probably some. And to be clear, that's not me saying he's not knowledgeable, but that's different than, did you watch tape on, the undercard guys? Did you watch their last 7 fights to get ready for this? That's a very different kind of thing. And I think that shows up in the way which he broadcasts. I think that the hardcore fan believes that he has ideas that are either bad or outdated. Even recently this week, there was a controversy where he believes that, and he's asking in earnest, right? He's not doing the Stephen A. Smith thing, but in this case, he was asking why do we not, currently on the stem of your neck where it leads to kind of that point on the back of your head, you're not allowed to strike that area in MMA for obvious reasons. Right. But Rogan was like, you should be able to hit to the back of the head. And it's yeah, but Joe, you also had on a polio vaccine truther. I mean, his sense of safety is highly questionable at this point. But as it pertains to MMA kind of conversations, or even, who are the best all time, he does not have what I would consider to be opinions that the hardcore fan respects as much as they once did. But again, the bigger picture is I don't think you can understand MMA's popularity without him, frankly.
Understood. Why did you ruffle some feathers, do you think, at least?
Because I talked about the athlete pay. And I don't think that did me any favors. This is the other part too, we're a free speech company. Dude, there's never been a more North Korean sports organization than the UFC. I mean, it's fucking ludicrous that the organization that has banned journalists, the organization where, dude, I've had matchmakers call me up and just angrily yell at me for fairly anodyne comments, To say nothing, as I mentioned, of other people being banned. Dana White recently telling Forbes he wants to have influencers cage side and put the media up in the stands. He wants to get rid of media rankings and go to a meta AI system. I mean, just total antipathy to reporting, total antipathy to anyone else having any kind of say over the product or any having an opinion that it gets out of line. It's just completely ludicrous that this is an organization that can claim the mantle of free speech, to say nothing of what I think their true motivations were, as aforementioned. It just blows my mind that this is a thing that people even like. That's what I just kind of can't believe. It's like, how do people take this seriously? Like this, I've never seen a sports organization that tries to control the message more than them. I've
Yes.
never seen it. Maybe Saudi Arabia. That's it. Like that's it. That would be their only competitor. The whole notion to me is kind of absurd. That doesn't really answer your question, but
No, but I am curious though, because you said you brought up fighter pay. This is something that has gained a lot of steam as we've learned so much about the organization. What was Rogan's reaction when you advocated for it?
there is no reaction to have. I mean, it's the same one he had this week to finding out that like Trump was deporting people, and
Uh,
then the government's own lawyers are in court being like, yeah, it was an administrative error, it shouldn't have happened, but now we just can't get him back from Bukele's dungeons. You know what I mean? Like
mhm.
it was kind of like that. Like he can tell that it's not good, but
But he has
I
to
think
play ball with the
he
league.
has to play ball. I think he's loyal to the UFC as well. You know what I mean? That's like he's had the. I mean, Joe's had the best job in MMA for almost 30 years. And for the vast majority of that time has done it quite well. Um, so I think he's quite loyal to them. But dude, this is the thing I'll say. There is no argument. There is no argument. The argument's over. It's
Mhm.
over. There was an argument for a long time. Are these guys underpaid? And there was all these different ways that people tried to look at it to kind of make an assessment, or maybe maybe this kind of fighter relative to boxing makes more. And there are some differences to an extent along those lines, but the reality is we know what the score is. The house keeps most of the money. They give very little away, and that's not an accident. It's by design, and we know all of that because of the antitrust trial. They turned over all these documents. Not only was that, they've got emails like, it's kind of funny. Like in antitrust cases, a lot of times my understanding is like lawyers have to like, they'll subpoena the Slack messages of Microsoft employees, and then they have to kind of like infer what they're saying to one another. They've got emails between like Dana and Lorenzo, or text messages being like, we're gonna we're gonna completely conquer this industry and choke out all the competitors so that they have no way of ever competing with us legally ever again. You know what I mean? Like Gargamel level, just laying out your plan to go get all the Smurfs, no ambiguity whatsoever. And I drew attention to that. I've drawn attention to that for a long time. I've kind of given it up more recently because a very painful lesson that I had to learn was that I don't think the fighters care. And I know that sounds bizarre, but I don't think that the vast majority of the evidence indicates that they don't really care. And
That's
so I
shocking.
stopped. There are some that do quite clearly. I want to say that, but it is man, that's the most painful lesson I've learned in almost 20 years covering this sport, is that I thought that you could present to them all this evidence that A, they're underpaid, and that B, there's a couple of different ways to rectify this, and that the overwhelming majority would shrug, and that some would even be hostile at you for doing it, and that's a reality. And so I've just kind of walked away because I don't really know how fruitful it is to keep contributing to this issue. But you asked about what I said on Rogan, a lot of that.
Yes, for sure. The irony is, I was going to ask if the fans cared, not if the athletes cared. I was going to ask you, do the fans give a shit that this antitrust lawsuit is revealing so much about the business model, or are they just, does it basically just fall on deaf ears within their fan base?
They don't care generally. And again, who can blame them if the fighters don't care? Why should the fans?
Fair.
Seriously, you know. I would say that they care in one very important respect, which is, are you guys, and you guys being the UFC, speaking as a fan,
Mm-hmm.
are you guys gonna pay the money to make the big fights? Right? Are you gonna sign these prospects that we want to see, and you're gonna put them in fights that we care about? Are you gonna sign money to put on big, like, so right now the big one that we're waiting on is John Jones, Tom Aspinall, and The UFC is probably going to give him a little bit of a bump in pay, but it seems unlikely that they're going to give him what he's asking for because they just never do that. So maybe he'll be the exception that proves the rule. I don't know, but they care in that sense. Like if it affects ultimately what gets delivered to them, and they can tell the UFC is being cheap about it. Like if you just look at the when I first got into MMA, the light heavyweight division was the marquee division. So this was Rampage, Tito Ortiz, Chuck Liddell, Randy Couture, Vitor Belfort, Ricardo Arona, Babalu Sobral, Vanderlei Silva. I mean, I could go on and
Huge
on.
names.
Just gigantic, like pillars of the industry, right? The light heavyweight division now is fucking horrendous. I mean, it's pathetic. It's terrible. There's a couple good names at the top. Few good names, I'll say. There's a few good names at the top, and that's really about it. Like, it's a complete disaster. Dude, you used to have a division where you had guys like Josh Barnett, this incredible grappler, and he could do more than that, but he was really known for that. Cain Velasquez, Fabricio Verdum, and Bigfoot Antonio Silva, Alistair Overeem. I could go on down the list. Junior Dos Santos, a prime Stipe Miocic. You look at the heavyweight division now, dude, and if Tom Aspinall, who's kind of like the big guy right now, if he doesn't get this John Jones fight, when I tell you that there is no other fight that they can make among another active heavyweight that anybody would care about, I'm not exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating. It has fallen into disrepair. And that kind of a thing gets the fans animated about pay because you can kind of clearly tell if they put a little bit more money into this, more people might be interested in doing it. But short of that, and again, I kind of understand it. Like if they can't be bothered, why should we?